But maybe if you load up on the CBD, Brian, you might be able to forget things that you have seen or done in the past, so you could watch them all over again, and they'd be new to you. Because I think that would benefit the they're advertising the new season of WWE programming is on A&E. I can't tell it from last season, and that's their problem. You didn't even know it was on.
Well,
Or you had
I knew about the
you knew
new.
that the concept of it was on, but you didn't know what they had done.
Yeah, I knew that new show was on where they keep showing like The Undertaker, Mickey James, Bubba Ray Dudley, and Booker T training people and exposing the business on TV. I knew that was on, but I didn't realize it was like a whole season of other things.
Oh yes, because now remember there's biography.
Yeah.
Usually, I think leading up to WrestleMania, it's been biography. I think they've run out of people to biograph. And it's been WWE's greatest rivals, and there's been some other. God, Heels was a program, but this year apparently it's WWE rivals. There was a 30-minute WWE greatest moments show on. This is on the Sunday night block, and then the show you talked about, WWE LFG Legends and Future Greats. Well, we can kind of agree on most of the legends. I don't know about any of the future greats, but the point is nobody's watching this shit because not only how much can you watch now? Raw is 2.5 hours on Netflix, but SmackDown's 3 hours on USA. And if you're a really motivated wrestling fan, there's a little programming they do on Wednesdays and Saturdays on the other networks, as they say. But then you've got the pay-per-views, and you've got Saturday night's main event. And now WWE rivals, they did Steve Austin and The Undertaker. My God, these are the two of the biggest names of the modern era. And a show on the rivalry between Steve Austin and The Undertaker did 178,000 viewers. We do that for audio clips talking about shit that people want to watch. And that in season one of this is like season 4 now. They have plumbed a lot of the rivalries. There ain't no great Hatfield and McCoy, deal left to go. The season 1, they were doing between 300 and 500,000 viewers, except for when they had to shoehorn, I think, Stephanie and Bree's, rivalry in there. And then the greatest moments show, I don't know if that's just a filler thing or if they're going to do an hour now going forward or just do 30 minutes or whatever. 169,000 because it was the debut of Monday Night Raw and how it revolutionized television forever. And they had some clips from the first show in 1993, and then they concentrated on the attitude of the top 10 greatest Raw moments were all between 1997 and 1999. And we've seen it. They've had the rivalries, they've had the legends, they've had the biographies, they've had the fucking blah blah blah. And it's the same people, talking heads, or even if they're legends. It is sometimes in sit down interviews from the same shows we've seen, and repurposed and or outtakes about a different subject in the same clothing in the same place and the same footage. And then LFG, which which opened the block and got the prime spot right at 8, was the lowest rated show of the bunch of them at 160,000.
Wow.
Because people don't want to see goddamn the klutzy fucking wrestling school students being bullied around by halfway interested legends. When they can watch 6 hours of the best in the world right now on the regular television show, but how much more time they got? So, yeah, 160,000, 169,000, 178,000, because we've seen it and how much, you know, go ahead, Brian. I don't mean to drone on and do a soliloquy. I'm just trying to. I'm pissed, is what I am. They're just. It's the same shit. That's at least the dark side shows are different subjects.
You know, the other thing is, I think WWE has this incredible archive of programming, but they always produce the least interesting programming out of it. You know, everything's kind of cookie cutter, standard, really formatted and fake at times, especially under Vince, like those documentaries. They had the right elements, the music and the cinematography, but
They look great.
it felt cheaper though. There was something about it that didn't really feel correct to me. And I think they've gotten better with that stuff, but whose biography are you interested in seeing right now? Undertaker and Steve Austin, if you were a major crazy fan of theirs, if you were a major crazy fan of theirs at their peak, how old are you now? You probably got past the point of wanting to see a deep dive into that. It's kind of just incidental viewing. The only one they really hyped the most was that LFG. I'm surprised it did as bad as it did. Or maybe they consider that good on A&E. I really don't know. That's the craziest thing out there. Not to talk about ourselves or put ourselves over, but there are other people too. We have more people on a daily basis watching your content than watching stuff like that that's on TV. That's not to say we're more popular than WWE. It's a statement about TV, the programming being produced. You know, TV's dying, and part of it's because the programming sucks. No one takes any risks, no one takes any chances. You know, Dark Side ended up being the most successful show in the history of Vice TV, to the point where, you know, kind of like that show we talked about earlier, The Foods That Made America. Now there's just copycat shows up the
Yeah.
gazoo.
There's the dark side of football, the cage, the 90s, the basketball, and you know, it's like the Road Warriors craze where everybody had the shoulder pads, the spikes, and the face paint. If something is wildly successful, try to copy it. But in this case, with the WWE, one would think that they have copied themselves instead of copying someone else's success. They're telling the same stories too often with the same people too often. They could, because of that incredible archive they have, they could do, in effect, a different thing of what Darkseid is doing. They own the AWA archive. Do a series on, or they own the Florida stuff. Do a series which focuses on an incredible talent in this genre from the Florida territory in the year 1978, and tell a fucking interesting story about a guy. But it's the same shit that we have seen on every program, every DVD, every documentary. They won't you do new shit. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
They should own their story in a way they never have. You know, they should do a documentary series. If A&E is willing to put up any money for any of this garbage content and no one's watching, I say garbage content. Content that feels like free propaganda-based content that could exist on your YouTube channel. That kind of content. You know, the road to the original WrestleMania, looking at the year leading up to it and really talking about each event, even the ones that were bad, even the ones that hurt the company. It's a long time ago. You could do it. And you know what? You don't have Vince looking over your shoulder. Tell the real story. You know, how he really bought the company. I mean, there's all these things that other people... Darkseid exists in part because there's always a demand for wrestling content, but originally, in part, because WWE never really owned their story. And instead
it was the only one that would tell a true story.
WWE went out there and WWE told their story, and you had to accept it, and that was it. WWE's at a point now where they could tell that story. Talk about David Schultz. Talk about Roddy Piper. Talk about Mr. T. Talk about everything and get real footage and make it a whole series. That at least is new. And if it's done right, because I know the content, it could be great. But instead we get Michael Cole picks his favorite Raw moments. There's no demand for that. There's nothing. And this LFG thing sounds like it's DOA. So we'll see what happens.
Well, and that's the thing. The AEW MO is let's have the same goddamn match just so people just can't tell one from another. The WWE MO now is let's just recap and herald and praise the same shit over and over and not delve any deeper to tell the goddamn story of anybody that we haven't already beat to death with a stick. We could make it interesting. That's the Chris Colt episode of Dark Side of the Ring was, I can't remember, 2 or 3 or 4 away from being the lowest rated episode because people were curious because that's a story they didn't know. And then they got to hear it. And for all the storytellers that the WWE claim to be, they're just goddamn. It's like Captain Lou. Every time you'd see him, he'd tell the same fucking joke. Pretty soon it's like, oh, God damn it.
But I think that's the reaction people have. If you've been watching these over the years, if Bruce Pritchard pops up, that's kind of the reaction you have because he's been the company lackey in all of these things. There's never any insight. It's more, here's the company justification that I think Vince would approve of. And I think that hurts these things. I think that sort of element, it used to be Steve Lombardi. He would appear in these things and just like say exactly what they want him to say.
But
it didn't feel real. And it didn't feel real.
And honestly, in Brooklyn Brawler's defense, one of the reasons why he got started doing so many comments on the DVD releases and then the documentaries and stuff is because since he also worked backstage as the production assistant of all trades, he assisted every producer with everything, running errands and getting this and lifting that. He was sitting there when they had no talent, when they had nobody. Everybody's fucking in a meeting or everybody's goddamn late. We have to hear. Let's shoot some comments with Brawler for so and so, and that way they could get ahead of their work if they shot a bunch of comments ahead of time. Anyhow, they need to shoot more comments with other people and tell more stories about other fucking people, and they might have more people watching A&E on a Sunday night in prime time as listen to us pontificate on many of our programs here.
Yeah, they should have done like something like we do. Like they should have done wrestler or porn star. I think that would have been a bigger hit on A&E on Sunday nights than this stuff. Than seeing the same. I love Steve Austin. I've seen all those clips so many times because it's the best stuff. And you're right, you feel like you've seen this stuff before because it almost felt like they rotated shows so that if The Rock and Austin were on Biography, then the next season they were on Rivals. Then the next season they were on, Hidden Feuds or whatever the fuck they were doing.
Oh, and I forgot about Hidden Treasures. Then we get to watch people buy their shit.
We used to get to watch Top Dollar harass John Pantozzi on that show.
Yes. Yeah, he's... Flop Dollar started out by being a fucking bad flea market negotiator but I think they've plumbed the well, as Aunt Lola might have said. It's unless they're going to do some different people from a different era. What's the matter with if you're telling a good story, does it matter that it's in the 80s instead of the 90s? Or potentially, was there any good stories that I've overlooked that they haven't told from 2009 or whatever? I don't know, but just something different.
See, I'd hit up all those guys from the 80s they haven't done, even if you don't think they're worthy of a biography. I think you'd be surprised at times who triggers people to watch. I would do a Coco Beware. I would do a Greg Valentine. Have they done Jim Duggan? I would do a Jim Duggan if they haven't done Jim Duggan.
No, they did a Jim Duggan biography.
They did Jim Buggan. Oh, Jim Buggan.
They did. They did
Jim Buggan.
They did Jim Buggan and his partner Jim Duggan.
But they should
Buggan and Duggan is what they called him down south.
I would really mine that well, and you get a lot of content out of it. And again, I don't think it's going to do remarkably worse than what they've got on there, which is more of the same. Fluff
I think the
content.
only,
Fluff content.
yeah. And that's the thing is it's all put together well because they have a wonderful crew, but it's the same thing.